Alright, remember when we had one of these? It was all assembled and it ran, and now we're down to this. It's a lot of parts. This thing's got to go back together, it's got to work. So, what we want to do is talk to you about all the parts, and as we assemble, we're going to learn what the parts do, how they work together, and the whole symphony of the engine working together and getting it running. Okay. We should all be close to, or at this point where we're just down to the engine block. Okay, obviously this is where all our parts go together, they all fit in it, on it, and this is where they all work together. So our engine block is usually cast, just cast iron, and it's poured. Parts are machined with their flat edges, parts inside. Next part that we have here is our cylinder head. Within our cylinder head we find our valves. So this whole assembly is our cylinder head. And in it, of course, are our valves that open and close. Okay. We didn't take our rockers off, which is a good thing because there's a lot of small parts. It's a little difficult getting back together. But that's our cylinder head, and these, of course, are our valves. Over to our piston and our piston rings, which you guys haven't taken off. But here are our piston rings that we happen to take off of our piston here, which is responsible for our oil control and compression within our cylinder. Attached to our piston is our connecting rod, which is this part. There's a little clip in there we could take off. We could pull that off. We could go further into pistons if we needed to, but we all should have them apart down to that point. In order to reassemble these parts and fit this back into our engine block, into our sleeve, is a ring compressor. And we're going to wrap this ring compressor around our piston to hold those rings around tight so we can slip it back into our engine block. Over here is our crankshaft, and obviously this is what our piston attaches to. This is where we get all our useful work out of. And on the one end here, it's going to be this end, is our key, or our keyway, where our flywheel key fits into. And that part is over here, flywheel key, real important part. It's funny that such a small, cheap, inexpensive part can cause your engine not to run. Here's our flywheel, of course, and this is responsible for our ignition system. We're going to talk about that as we assemble it. For here are tappets, and these are what ride on our camshaft. And on our camshaft assembly we have a cam lobe, which are these two parts, kind of egg-shaped, if you will. Okay, and our cam gear, which is a gear that turns our camshaft, and our tappets ride on these lobes so that they may push up on our push rods. And our push rods here are, of course, pushing back up on our valves in our cylinder head. Back over here we have our gaskets, just a few of the different gaskets in our set. Whenever we have two pieces that need to fit together and seal gases or liquids or whatever the case may be, we need to install a gasket. So hopefully you have your gaskets and they're all intact. Moving over to here, our crankcase cover. And we know how our gaskets work along with our crankcase cover. Moving back over here is our carburetor. This is what's responsible for our fuel delivery, okay, and how much air and fuel our engine is getting. It is our carburetor. If we go over here, obviously our spark plug is responsible for our spark, and our spark is jumping from our little electrode here to ground. And what delivers the spark to the spark plug is our armature. This is our armature, and it uses the magnet on the flywheel to help create a spark to deliver it to the spark plug. And what's really important about our ignition system is that spark needs to obviously be delivered at the correct time. That's right, at the correct time. Remember, this is a symphony that's happening, and everyone needs to be in tune, and every part needs to work together. In order to test our spark plug, we have a special tool here we haven't talked about yet, and that's our ignition tester. And we could use this in conjunction with our armature, and in this gap here we'll be able to see if there is a spark, or if our engine has spark or ignition. Obviously without ignition our engine won't run. Here we have a hose clamp. Real small part. If we take this and we transfer it over to a car, basically a car's hose clamp is just bigger, but it's the same style and they work the same. Moving over here to our muffler. I've had a student call it an egg sauce, but it's exhaust. And that's our muffler, and that's there to help quiet down the engine so it's not loud. Moving over to here, we have our air cleaner, or our air filter. Obviously air that's coming into our engine needs to be clean, especially if it's working in dusty situations. It's going to increase the longevity of our engines. Another special tool we haven't talked about yet is our torque wrench, and we're going to need this for much of our assembly of our engine. We have a pointer style analog torque wrench, so as I twist or I torque down my bolt, we're going to see that this little dial here is going to tell us how many inch-pounds of force we're putting on that specific fastener. The other torque wrench we have, a little bit more fancy, is this one. It's a click style. I'll show you guys how to use that one. But these are going to be real important tools that we're all going to have to use. And last but not least, we're going to go over here to our strap wrench. And this is what's holding down our flywheel in order to remove it and install it. We also had to use that puller and special tools. There are special tools like this in the automotive world also, where certain parts need to be pulled off using pullers, straps, things of that nature.